All right, so today we're going to mainly talk about readmes and then address some other questions after, but I have linked 3 readme examples here. They're all a little bit different. I'll just walk through what the differences are later on. And also in terms of slides, a couple of people have asked for additional examples, so I've added a couple more examples. These are very, very different from the one that I had linked before. So if you're interested, feel free to take a look and see like which one speaks to you more, I guess. So let's start by talking about readmes. What is a readme and what is it used for? This is an example. So any of your projects that you do on GitHub, I think if anyone remembers at the very start when we created our GitHub, we initialize with a readme. And that really just is this part that appears on the home page of your repo. This is the page that people see when they click into your GitHub link. Like if you were to list it on your portfolio or on your LinkedIn, stuff like that, this is the first thing people see. And there are many different ways to utilize a README. For our purposes, most likely it is to summarize your project. So the main things that you want to include on your README are things like, what was your project about? If you had any like important findings or conclusions. And I'll walk through a couple examples, but it kind of is up to you how you want to present your stuff. I personally like shorter READMEs that go through pretty much like an overview of each part of your project, but it's really up to you and how you want to market your project. I would say for this first project, it's definitely, you have more freedom to play around with it and find out what works best for you. I will be a little bit more, I'll be a little bit more nitpicky when it comes to the READMEs for later projects, because those will be the ones more likely to end up on your portfolio. But this is an example. This is the same project that you guys are doing just from 2 years ago. For this README, what they had done were they talked about the goals, and the project was slightly different before, just so you know. But they talked about their project goals. In this case, you might want to write out what your questions were. They quickly talked about their methodology. And I think this is the bulk of the READMEs that we'll see today, all of their graphs and insights. So here, they really just have all their insights listed in their READMEs. I'll talk about how to write a README and like the formatting of this after I go through like the content. So overall, just to summarize what I had said earlier, README quite flexible on like what kind of information you want to have, but you want it to be informative enough so that people know what your project's about. If you have anything specific that you did that you kind of want to like draw people's attention that you did in your on something that you did in your project, you could put in your README as well. So this is just one example. I just want to quickly like briefly go through each example. You can take your time and read them over. So that was the first one. This is another one also done about almost 2 years ago. But here you can see very, very similar structure. They talk about the questions. They have some hypotheses here that they were testing for, and then they talk about their findings. I'd say this one I like because they kind of like actually put into words the answer to their questions, and they do really connect it to the business case that they're trying to make here. So I like this one quite a bit. Very similar structure, just that they have a little bit more information about their findings, and yeah. Just like this. And also like a conclusion section. So this is another example. And lastly, you can have something like this. Again, very similar to this one. What they did that is unique between the 3 that I've shared that you can also think about is they're literally using their slides here for some of them. Most of their info is the info that was contained in their slides. And if you think about it, what you have in your presentation is the most concise version of what you did. And that very, very often translates into good material for your README. So I remember that's what this group did. Some things that were on the slide, I think they just like copied and pasted it over here. And that's another way to go about it. Also makes a little bit less work for you to do. So yeah, again, similar structure. They started with a bit of introduction, overview of their data, and then talked about their findings. So any questions about the content of a README first? Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I'd say like a lot of the content that goes into either your slides or your README should come straight from your notebook, because your notebook should be the most complete version. So it shouldn't be too hard to just extrapolate information from that to go into your slides or your README. But yeah, take a look at these examples for inspiration if needed. Next, how to write a README. There are several ways to do it. I think the easiest way to go about it is through GitHub itself. So if I were to, let's see if I have an example that I can pull up. If I go into my GitHub and talk about READMEs, let's wait for this to load. Hold on. Let me just go to my repositories, maybe that'll be faster. All right, so for example, movie project. Easiest way to edit your README. This one, simplest to edit your README, but other things to consider with your Git. But I'll walk through this first. If you want to edit your README on the GitHub GUI, that's, I think, one of the easier ways to do it. All you have to do is literally just click the edit button and then you can start typing. There are all these formatting elements that are very, very similar to these cells in a Jupyter notebook. So I'm sure you guys have already started to do like Markdown cells. And in those cells, it's the exact same format that a README is written in. So if you know how to, like, make these titles, subtitles, that's done in the exact same syntax here. I'll also send out a cheat sheet. Actually, let me pull it up right now. Markdown cheat sheet, and the best one is this one, I think. But this one tells you exactly all of the syntax to get things in different formats. Also talks about how to embed images. So I'll share this. Actually, let me just quickly put this in the guidelines here. Cheat sheet. Here we go. I did not want that there. Here we go. So cheat sheet's there for you to get the Markdown syntax. So one thing to note, if you are editing your README on this, and I mean, I like this as well because you can actually preview your changes without actually having to like save them. If you're doing this, we conclude we should make good movies, for example. When you commit this change, because you're actually making a commit on the remote, remember that you have to git pull these changes. If not, you'll run into a conflict. So just remember, if you decide to edit it here, that you should do that. Another way to edit a README is you can actually edit your READMEs through the Jupyter. Actually, let me see if I can do this here. Yeah, this is one of my projects. You can edit your README here. And the only downside is you can't see how it would render, but you can do it here as well. And then the only way you would test it is push your README and just see how it appears on GitHub. But the way that a README works, any file that is named README, it'll automatically know and detect that and know that that is what they render on the front page. So if for some reason you didn't initialize your repository with a README, you can just create a new file, call it readme.md, and it will automatically know that that is your README file. One final way to do it, and it does depend on your preferred text editor. Let me just reshare with my entire screen real quick. Let's see. Here we go. So another way to do it is through your preferred text editor, and mine is called Atom. I'm not sure if I've talked about text editors with you all yet, but not to worry too much about this because we don't really need to use text editors yet. Let me go into one of my projects and then open it in your text editor. So mine is Atom. I like Atom because I like the way it looks. I think it has a very user-friendly interface. And you can edit your README in here as well. So here in Atom, I can pull up my README file. I can't make this sidebar bigger, but this is my README file. And I can edit my README here. Good part about Atom is there is a shortcut that allows you to preview it on the side. So I think, I want to guess it's Command M. I'm just testing. All right, not this. This should render. Usually it does render. I'm not sure why it isn't. Let me try this again. There we go. So on a Mac for Atom, it's Control-Shift-M to preview the Markdown. And I can basically type it on this side and watch it automatically update here. So that's just my preferred way of doing Markdowns, just because easiest way to see, and you don't have to worry about pulling down changes that you made remotely. Any questions on like the different ways you can do a Markdown? I think most students in the first mod actually just do it on GitHub because it's the easiest to figure out.
Do you know if Visual Studio will do that too?
Visual Studio, you can edit it in Visual Studio. I'm not too sure. I would be surprised if they didn't have a Markdown preview. But we can actually, let's just do a quick Google to see. I think most people use VS Code. So Visual Studio Code Markdown preview. So seems like you can do a Markdown preview here. And oh, nice, side by side as well. But you might have to install, I'm not sure if you have to install, you have to install probably an extension. But yeah, looks like it can be done. Anything else about Markdowns?
So if you use some like text editor like Atom, you just bring it up and then it has all the files almost like Jupyter Notebook.
Yeah, so the way that I launch it, there are different ways to do it, is let's say this is not open, let's close this. In your terminal or in your Git bash, once you cd into your project repository, and this is just one of my projects, you just type Atom, and you can either type in a specific file, like I think I can do this, and it will launch the specific file in Atom, or, and I think for VS Code it works the same way too, by the way. Or I can just do Atom and open all, which is period is the shorthand for, and it'll open all of the files. So actually everything here is all of the files that exist in this repo. And so I can basically click through different things. I can click through like this Python file. I can take a look at like all of my other things. And we'll talk about this stuff another time. We're not ready for that yet, but yeah. Anything else? Cool. I will stop the recording and then we'll talk about, actually, yeah, I'm gonna stop the recording and we'll talk about these other things. Where's this stop button?